Greetings. I am Pastor Ingrid Ryan Ruben, Senior Pastor at St. Cecilia Spiritual Baptist Church and Healing School in Faizabad. I am also the Principal Associate of the Academy of Grace and Institute for Spiritual Development and convener of the Circle of Elders, a group of elders convened to become who are memory keepers of the mysteries of the faith. In celebration of Liberation, Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day 2020, I'm reading for you excerpts from my book entitled Cobalt, the Blue Zone. This second excerpt will come from chapter 5, entitled The Spiritual Baptist Faith Grows. Following the repeal of the Prohibition Ordinance, while persons were free to join or practice their faith, the faith still carried a stain that was difficult to remove. This did not stop the faithful followers of Christ who pressed on with their God-given mandate to serve Him in the way revealed to them by the Holy Spirit. The 1960s saw these brave soldiers for Christ labor on with their faith tradition, baptizing and pointing souls despite the disdain and scorn poured on them by their neighbors and the society at large. The boldness of men like Tubal Uriah Buzz Butler in the 1950s, Elton Griffith and Teacher Bailey in the 1950s, and Archbishop Barbara Burke, Mother Monica Randu, Mother Hercules, and many others in the 1980s, have contributed significantly to the increased level of comfort and freedom that is today enjoyed by the spiritual Baptist faith. The 1970s can be signaled as a pivotal decade for spiritual Baptist growth and development, as well as a watershed period in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. The early 1970s were difficult years. Whilst the decade began with the Black Power Revolution, it ended with an oil boom. During the period of the Black Power movement, especially near the end of the decade, there was a rampant fear in the communities due to the heavy-handedness of the police forces. The fight for Black Power occurred on the political platform as well as on the guerrilla front. This meant that there were attacks from underground forces against the government of the time. These activities were met with brute force from the flying squad, a police team led by Randall Burroughs, the nation's notorious police commissioner, who personally led his team of officers tasked with quelling the movement. Communities such as Faizabad, where I grew up, produced young men who joined the movement and made the community a target for police actions. My love-hate relationship with the police is a direct result of this period in time, when so many young men from my community had to face down the brute force of the police. Many bad officers were stationed in Faizabad to quell the uprising among youth. Faizabad has always been a place that produced fearless citizens and a battleground for the rights of the people. The labor movement began in Faizabad. Tubal Uriah Buzz Butler fought for the rights of oilfield workers and led a political movement for self-governance, which was built on a platform in Faizabad. It is why the labor movement converges on the southern town every year to celebrate Labor Day holiday in Faizabad, because Faizabad was the movement's battleground. Even though the fight for Black Power in Trinidad was Port of Spain based, Faizabad was also the place where most of the guerrilla activities occurred. The community therefore saw a lot of action, and many young men died or were imprisoned during this period. Our relationship with the police was always contentious. This community supported its sons. Mothers whose sons were fighting for black liberation and were part of the Black Power movement spoke in hushed tones, and despite the curfew attended their churches and prayed for their sons. Many mothers went on the mourning ground to fast and pray. I remember clearly the late night meetings which took place under the big mango tree on the gallows, that is the Delay Road Recreation Ground. And men in dashikis who led those meetings. I recall seeing the body of a young man who was involved in the resistance movement lying dead in a pool of blood on Can Street. I was in primary school at the time. Many persons sought the assistance of spiritual Baptists for cover and protection during this difficult period, including people from the government, families who had children involved in the movement, as well as many activists themselves. After years of disaffection with the PNM, during the early 1970s, including our no-vote movement, which saw the government return to power in 1971, the PNM got a get-out-of-jail card with the oil boom in 1972-73 period. The PNM had governed for decades. Despite disaffection with their policies, the oil boom gave them new life. Let's celebrate Liberation 2020 and remember what our forefathers experienced so that today we can worship with freedom. Thank you. Happy Liberation 2020.